So Coach Williams alluded to this, the fact that he's going to be really happy when we get into the new Tippin. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say there is nobody in this room, maybe in this county, that'll be happier to get back into new Tippin than you. Obviously I think some of our fans know some of the, I won't even say difficulties. It's a challenge right now. You're traveling to practice both your diving programs and your swimming programs. But the thing that's really impressed me throughout it all has been the immensely positive attitude you have carried through that and that you've imparted upon your athletes.
Well, everyone is struggling, all the coaches, all the kids, all the teams. So, I look at what I can control. And right now, the facts are that we're not in our facility for the whole year. And we haven't had a home meet in 2 years. So the kids are really looking forward to getting our facility for home meets, for practice, for not being on a bus for 2 hours. But, we're all in this together, the whole department. So.
And this is something that, I think everybody saw this coming, obviously, with the talk of the renovations. And so that gave you the opportunity to devise a way to work around it. I think your program probably has a pretty good, or at least as good a method as you're going to have to work around it. And I'm struck by the notion you hear that sometimes new coaches say when they come to programs, not that you're new, and they say those that stay will be champions. And it's the idea that the athletes that are going to work through this adversity now are going to be better off for it in the long run. Do you think that's the case with your program?
I truly feel that way. I don't think that they're just going to get better and improve along the program, but this is a life lesson that they're going through. This is something that I think forever it will be one of the most challenging moments of their young adult life that they can learn from about time management, doing things on lack of sleep, performing and still having expectations when maybe things aren't always perfectly set up for you. So when kids come to me and they're having a tough time, and, we've had some of them and who've decided to walk away from the program for the time being, I invite them back next year if they would like to come back, because I know right now, this is not the ideal situation. But when kids come to me and they say things like, this is tough, I'm not getting enough sleep, or struggling with school, or I have this going on, or, how are we swimming enough to get better? Are we doing enough? I'm encouraging them to focus on the right now, what we can do to be better athletes, be better in the pool, get the most out of the 2 hours we have to swim a day and the hour of dry land or lifting, and making the most of it. And I think, we've always been taught that more is better, and that's what makes you faster in swimming is by swimming, more yards and more hours per day. But, my goal is that we can prove people wrong in February when we get down to it, and we get enough training under our belts from the semester and then Florida training, that we can show ourselves that we don't need more, and that we made the most of this time. Because, there are days when it seems like long bus rides and things like that, but they get on the pool deck and it's like we didn't just take an hour bus ride. They're ready to go, they're excited, we blast the music, and they're focused and they have goals. So I didn't lower my expectations, and they know that. But I also made them a little more realistic for the situation, if that makes sense.
No, it does. What you're saying is that, it's... Actually, I want to go back to another point you made. You mentioned the idea that, you've been trained, or rather the culture around swimming is that, do more, do more, do more.
Oh, yes.
Do you find that it becomes sort of a keeping up with the Joneses mindset, where if you say, well, they're swimming X, well, we got to swim X plus 1 because that's going to be better, and you catch yourself falling into this trap of continually doing what everybody else is doing and trying to one-up everybody?
I would say the kids think that. But I am a big believer in research and continuing education and becoming the best coach you can be in your sport. And doing a lot of reading and referring to other coaches who've been through this type of a renovation. I did my research. I talked to people. I spoke to coaches that went through a year out of their facility. And I read books about how back in the 90s, how people would train versus how they are training now. And what's that doing to kids' shoulders and swimming specifically. And then long-term effects that those kids are having. And I think our kids, my swimmers, still think, oh, we're not doing doubles every day. Like, how can I be in shape? And I just had this conversation with someone yesterday. I discussed, you are in shape. We are, I knew coming in August that this was going to be how the year was set up. I made a training plan based around what we're going through. So you're not out of shape. You're in shape. Now, other teams may be swimming more. That doesn't mean they're in better shape. That is a mental shift that they all have to take. And it's not easy for 18 to 22-year-olds when they're so used to knowing, and, our seniors, they're like, well, the last 3 years we were swimming 12, 13 times a week, and now we're only doing 5. If that, because if we have a competition but we're making the most of the time in the pool instead of filling it with backyards or garbage, as some coaches would like to say. And I think that they're getting quality training and specific training. This is we are breaking up into groups, sprint, distance, middle distance, and stroke several days a week so that each kid is getting exactly what they need. My goal was, when we get to December and February, when they get behind the blocks, I want them to feel like I am ready to go. I'm ready for my race, not thinking, oh, am I ready to do this? Am I going to die? How is this going to go? They need to be up there with 100% confidence. To do that, I felt like we needed to train them specifically for what they need. And I think that's exactly what they're getting.
Now, helping you implement that training this year is one of your recent graduates, and he's one of the most accomplished recent graduates in program history. I'm talking about Ben Spencer. How has his influence been on these people that were his teammates less than a year ago?
Some would think, I do have some people who ask me, how is it going? Is it going okay with Ben? It has been phenomenal. He is well respected by the team, not just because he's a coach, but because he's earned respect with his performance as a swimmer. But also, he knows his stuff. He is like a second me. I love it. He is very energetic in practice. He knows his technique. He worked camp with me for several summers, so I feel like he has become a product of me. Whereas he knows how I like coaching. He knows what I expect. The kids want that. They crave people giving them feedback and attention and encouragement in practice, and it's nice, and it's like a breath of fresh air to have someone who is so passionate like you are. So
like you? Oh, like
no,
you?
Me.
I thought like me.
I am.
I'm like, I don't know. I mean, that's implying a lot. But that's fine. So, Coach, let's talk about some of the athletes on your team. And I don't want to single anybody out because I think last year I started singling people out, and then you started correcting me about, oh, you didn't mention this person, or you didn't mention this person. So I'm going to be a little more general. Let's take a look at the women's side. I think some of the names people know off the top of their heads are going to be like Becca Yannick, Mary Claire Smith, Abby Newman. But you've got a whole lot of women that had success last year, and they're ready to build on that.
Well, just to kind of talk about the women's side in general, one thing I looked at and referred to at the end of the season, or even during the season when we're in recruiting, was that we were lacking depth. So we had some of the top finishers in events, but we didn't have the second and third or fourth. This year, we're winning meets because we're swimming well and we're doing well, but we have depth. If you look at the performances of Gannon, Shippensburg, and Grove City that we won on the women's side, we were getting second, third, fourth. I mean, the last meet against Shippensburg, we went 1-2 in our medley relay. I don't remember ever doing that coaching here. That just started the meet off on a great note. But that is what you need for the PSAC championship meet. You have to have depth to be able to compete in the top 3. And I knew that at the beginning of the year last year. You always look for certain things that are graduating. If you're graduating a distance swimmer or an IMer, but we brought in 14 freshmen. All the girls are still on the roster, and 21 girls deep, which you can only take 18 to the conference meet, sets you up very well. And that was a goal of mine. I knew that we needed to bring more bodies in, and not just bodies, but girls who were going to be talented enough to compete and race for those second, third, fourth spots.
Well, like you said, if you want to compete in the top 3 of the conference championship, it's not enough to just get a winner. Correct. You've got to stack points in certain spots, and maybe you got to find an event where you can really take, 3 of those top 8, something like that. That's what the successful programs do. Let's take a look at the men's side a little bit. It's a mix there. The roster a little bit smaller than it has been in years past. You look at some of the names, veterans like Josh Thruston is back, Joe Foles is back. We've also got some freshmen that I think that you're really counting on to score you some points this year.
Yeah, so we have kids who, since our men's roster has dropped a little bit just during this season based on the traveling schedule, and kids just they couldn't make it happen with the traveling and getting home late or leaving at 4:30 in the morning for practice. Some kids chose that it wasn't worth it. But the kids that we have left are working extremely hard, and what is unique about them is that we are having to move them around in different spaces to figure out where we are with the men. You have your kids like, Joe Foltz, who will swim the 200 freestyle, and Josh will swim breaststroke, 100 breast, and 50 free. And you have certain events that we know kids will stay in and swim, but we're mixing it up to see where we can get our most points possible and putting kids in different things, and they're performing and they're doing well. And they're rising to that, challenge. Whereas, previous years you would have kids who are just swimming certain events and recruited for certain events, but I'm trying to find maybe this kid is good at something else that he doesn't know. So with this change this year, the men's team has, they're going through the toughest time with having a lot less swimmers than we anticipated, and kids have left the team. But they're doing a great job. Like, the kids we have are improving week to week to week, and that's what I can control. And I'm focusing on so much with them as making them the fastest they can be and doing the best we can and building into next year. And having already 5, 6 guys or 6 kids signing next week for next year without even seeing a pool and knowing what we're going through this year, I think is huge testament to my team. They're the ones selling it and getting kids to come here, not just me or Ben or the program or the school. But the team, we also brought in 14 freshmen this year with no facility, nothing to show them, telling them, yes, we'll be traveling for a year. Are you okay with that? And they still came. To me, we're headed in the right direction with those type of kids.
So you sound like Coach Williams there a little bit. You're talking about keeping the faith, and you're talking about, getting these kids to believe in something that they haven't seen with their own eyes. And you gave all the credit to your team, but I do think that there has to be some credit going to you and Ben and Dave Rovat as well, because you've created a program where that kind of culture exists, where you have athletes that can sell that to
absolutely
incoming freshmen as well. Let's talk about Dave Rovat. I don't know where he is. He could be on the road right now coming back from Westminster.
He is.
Saw him yesterday, still seemed as chilled out as can be, or at least, Dave is always pretty chilled out. But he's got his divers, and I think 3 of the 4 of them, or may even be all 4 now, have already hit their qualifying marks for nationals this season. And they're driving a long ways to go practice, and they're competing as well. The diving program has been something that over the however many years, the decades that he's been here, has been one of the strongest aspects of this program, and you really can't say enough about how important Dave has been to building that.
He is irreplaceable. He is the glue for the divers. I can't believe that Carrie already broke a school record at Westminster, and they already have their scores they need for nationals, but I'm also not surprised. He brings kids here because of how talented he is, and his records show that. And his attitude has been great too. So he's also traveling close to an hour every day for practice, and they're going in the evenings. And then they have some dry land work they do in the mornings as well. And him and I both took the stance that we're not going to be these negative Nancys walking around feeling sorry for ourselves. It is what it is, and we're going to focus on making our kids better. And every day he'll, email me or text me and, only 5 weeks to go, and, where he's counting down because the traveling for him, at least I'm sitting on a bus, like he's driving.
Sure.
So it's, but still his attitude has been great, and the kids feed off of that. And I knew that from the start of coming into this season, that however the coach approaches the season and their attitude, the kids will feed off of that. And so him and I were both decided that this was how it was going to be, and we knew it, and we were going to be as positive as possible. And his kids are feeding off that. There is no skip in any one step on the program right now. They're not walking around like they're maybe a little tired, but they're not walking around feeling sorry for themselves or hating their life. They're, approach it every day like this is a chance to get better.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your schedule here. You've already started competing. You've had some dual meets, and then the beginning of December here has usually traditionally been one of your big invitationals you've competed in at Akron, and then that gives way to, at the beginning of January, your long training trip. You mentioned doing some things differently. Are you anticipating approaching this December-January stretch any differently than you have in years past as you look ahead to the conference championships?
Yeah, so usually majority of the teams that will attend the Akron Invite will do a full 14-day taper. They'll say they don't, but they do. And we always do that. We do a full drop rest because you have hit a certain amount of weeks that you need in training and swimming to be able to rest. And it's a great middle point to rest before they go back up in yards in Florida and things like that for PSACs. Going from September to February, late February, is a really long season for swimming. So there is always that midpoint. So usually we do a full rest, but I've decided we're going to do a drop rest. The kids knew that in the fall and are prepared for it. So the only difference is instead of doing a full 14-day rest, which some kids don't do anyway, everyone tapers differently, it will be right after Thanksgiving. We will be dropping down and preparing for the Akron meet a little differently. I have seen huge success with this. We've done this for certain individuals on the team in the past because their bodies don't need as much rest as others. But this is a way for them to realize we haven't maybe got all of the training that I want under your belt yet, and we'll get that in Florida. And then when we get to PSACs where I really want to showcase their swims, they'll be prepared and we'll fully rest. Dave is also going to Akron with us, and they will set up their lists and dive their best dives. He has a lot of competition at this meet as well, and there are a few new schools at this meet this year. So our goal is going to be make it back to finals. The top 16 make it back, and it will be competitive. There's several Division I teams there, but that's what I like about this meet. It's a fast pool, the best pool that we swim in all semester. It's great competition. The kids see some really fast swims that they don't see for the rest of the year on the men and women's side. So it's always been an exciting meet. They get their suits on, they get excited, and they get ready to race. So they're still going to have all of that. It's just bringing their bodies down just a little bit less.
Positivity, innovation, no lowering of expectations.